Good evening. I'm Lady Nopeingham. Tonight's stories are a bit more on the sentimental side, but I find each one to have its own spooky charm. The last story, The Hands of Death, is really more of a love story, but it's just so beautifully written that I had to include it. The imagery in it almost makes my cold, dead heart start beating again. Thanks go out, as always, to tonight's writers. I will include their info and links in the notes below. Anyway, I hope you enjoy tonight's video. If so, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on tonight's stories in the comments below. Have a beautiful night, everyone. We only go out at night. The house was dark, like it always was, and lit by a few candles. From room to room the shadows danced and played, casting dark images against the walls and corners. Victoria lounged on a love seat, clicking her long nails on her knee as she waited. The house was always boring at this time, and she would give anything to go out. She sighed, gazing over at the covered windows, and dreamed of the world outside. The shadows tugged at her dress, and she shooed them away with a flick of her wrist. They chittered and retreated back to their homes on the walls. Victoria sighed again and twirled her fingers around the flame of a nearby candle. The heat danced between her fingers, and the smoke billowed in the palm of her hand. The others were so old school. The least they could do was get a TV so there was at least something to do while they waited. Victoria wasn't much of a sleeper, wasn't before and wasn't now. So while the others slept, she sat and waited. It was mind-numbingly boring, and she hated every second of it. She lived for when they could leave, and she dreamed of escaping this place, running far away and building her own home, and maybe making her own family, without all the stupid rules. "What are you still doing up, child? Why are you not sleeping like the others?" Madame Natalia said as she entered the room. She held a lit candelabra in one hand, her dress skirts in the other. Out of them all, Madame Natalia was the oldest. She wore a thick velvet Victorian dress that wrapped around her body tightly. It had a high neckline and seemed to be strangling the poor woman, but she never seemed distressed or uncomfortable. Natalia set the candelabra down on the table and sat on the love seat across from Victoria. "I can't sleep. Is it time to go soon?" Victoria asked eagerly, but not too eagerly. She didn't want to show weakness in front of the madam. Natalia looked across the room to the old grandfather clock, whose metal arms read 8:24. "Yes, it is nearly time. But, child, you must start resting. You'll grow weak and fragile if you don't." To emphasize this, Natalia ran her long fingernails over her dress, smoothing out the wrinkles. Her nails were almost as long as her fingers and very sharp. They glinted in the candlelight, and Victoria winced. She remembered when she first saw those nails, and exactly how sharp they really are. Absent-mindedly, she ran her fingers over her left side, envisioning the scars underneath her dress. "I have trouble sleeping. I always have," Victoria said, taking her eyes away from those dreadful nails. Natalia smiled kindly, but her eyes were dark. "After all this time, and you still have trouble? Darling, what am I going to do with you?" she cooed. Victoria winced again and looked down. "Maybe if I let you out early, you can let out some of that energy, Natalia stood and started to head out of the room. Victoria jumped to her feet quickly and followed after, but not too close. "Really? You mean it? I can go out?" she said, wringing her hands in anticipation. Natalia nodded and placed her hand on the knob of the front door. She looked back at Victoria and smiled that sweet smile again. "Just remember to be back before the sun rises. Happy hunting." With that, Natalia flew open the door. A cool autumn breeze greeted Victoria playfully, and the full moon cast a sickening glow. Victoria smiled widely, revealing a mouth full of sharp, jagged teeth. She took off quickly, not giving the older woman a chance to change her mind. As she ran, she unfurled her wings and started to lift into the air. The wind rushed past her, and no clouds dotted the sky. The moon hung wide and bright, guiding her way through the night. She giggled as she went faster, the hunger starting to grow in her stomach. It was Halloween, the perfect night for a feast. And Victoria, well, she had quite the appetite. The Girl in the Goethe House. I pass under the words Goethe family estate and grapple with a queer feeling of unease. The archway is flanked by faceless statues, their features worn smooth by wind and rain. The path to my right leads down the hill, past rows of uniform headstones, to the old convent. Ahead of me stands the Goethe Manor House. The convent was closed decades ago, and the Goethe House has been abandoned for over a century. The only building on the estate that is still occupied is half a mile away, the former Catholic girls' school, now converted to a nursing home for ailing and aging nuns. The breeze lifts the hair from the back of my neck. I hug my jacket tighter around me and walk straight. I cannot place the source of my discomfort. Graveyards hold no dread for me, and I have spent much time inside crumbling buildings. Perhaps it is the trees that grow alongside the path, brought from faraway places and replanted at the Goethe family's command. Perhaps I can sense they do not belong. The Goethe house looms larger as I approach. It is made of a yellow stucco that looks out of place in the gray light of the Pennsylvania autumn sun. It looks tired, with peeling paint and sinking edges. But strangely, all the windows are intact. I lean down to inspect a monarch drinking from a thistle that pushed its way up through a crack in the stone walkway. It is late in the season to see one, and the unexpected beauty makes me smile. I hear my grandmother's voice. Butterflies are pretty, but moths are special. They carry souls to the moon. But what happens when a moth gets trapped inside? I had asked her. Then the soul is trapped too. Why do you think so many houses are haunted? The insect flutters upwards and drifts past a second-story window. A pale face peers from it, watching me from a room I know is empty. I raise my hand to the girl in greeting, when bony fingers wrap around my wrist and whip me around. An ancient nun drags my face closer to hers. A few solitary teeth jut from her gums like crumbling gravestones in a forgotten cemetery, and her breath is sharp and sour. It consumed the sisters who walked without feet, she spits, her eyes boring into mine, as if she could burrow her thoughts into my head by the force of her stare. Her rheumy eyes filled with tears. Don't let me die here, she weeps, as two women appear by her side to pry her clenched fingers from my arm. Not here. Not here. One of the nuns leads the old nun away, patting her back and murmuring in soothing tones. The taller one remains and fusses over my wrist. I'm awfully sorry about that. Did she hurt you? I'm fine, I assure her. I apologize if I did something to disturb her. No, Sister Agnes is not well. She was pulling one of her weekly runners. She twists my wrist this way and that. If I may ask, who are the sisters who walk without feet? She shrugs. The babblings of dementia. The babblings of dementia. When she is satisfied my arm is still in working order, she steps back. I'm supposed to tell you not to be so close to the house. You can walk around the estate. It's pretty this time of year. It's just that house is not structurally safe. I nod in acquiescence, looking at the crack that runs from the base of the house all the way up 3 floors. The nurse shivers. "This place gives me the willies." Her voice drops to a whisper. "Supposedly, before the convent was closed, 2 separate nuns tried to burn it down." The eastern wall bows out slightly. Someday it will split open like an overripe carcass. The nurse claps her hands together. The noise bounces off the house walls. "Well, I better get back before I get in more trouble," she grimaces. "Sister Agnes is old, but gosh, she's fast." I wave at her as she trudges across the field towards the nursing home. Before heading towards the old convent building, I look again at the 2nd-story window. It's empty. It doesn't matter. I'll find her when I return tonight. This will not be my first ghost encounter, nor my 100th. Yet that strange, foreboding feeling still clung to me as I hurried past the trees, their silhouettes made monstrous in the moonlight. It dogged me as I completed the pedestrian portion of communing with the spirits, the breaking and entering part. I successfully jimmied the lock to the heavy oak doors at the front of the Goethe house and slipped inside. I now find myself standing in the atrium, the yellow-green of the walls faintly visible in the moonlight. It reminds me of a summer sky before a tornado. The moon is bright tonight, and my nighttime vision has always been excellent. I creep deeper into the house. It has been gutted, all the furniture and paintings having been removed years ago. Dust blankets every surface like a layer of snow. The air is stale and dry. "Hello," I say softly to the little girl at the top of the grand staircase. "I'm here to set you free." I would estimate she is about 7. She is wearing a white dress, frothy with lace, and her blonde hair is the disagreeable kind that hangs limp and refuses to hold a curl. The room is dark, but she herself has a pulsating glow. She is pouting. "Hello," I whispered again. "I'm here to free you, if you can take me to your wings." I pick my way across the squeaking floorboards. I put my right foot down, and the board underneath splits. My foot goes through the hole, and I pitch forward. I land hard and grunt as the air is pushed from my body. I can feel the splintered edges rake against my ankle. I'm sure it has drawn blood. Wincing, I gingerly extract my foot from the hole. I turn on my flashlight, and the girl vanishes. I turn it off, and she is waiting at the top of the stairs. I sigh and continue towards the stairs in the dark. I prod each board thoroughly with my shoe before transferring my weight. I reach the banister, and the moon better lights my way. "Show me where your wings are," I say. The girl spins and rushes down a hallway. I follow. She reaches the 3rd door on the left and passes through it. I catch up and twist the doorknob. The door swings inward, and I enter. Aside from a brick fireplace, the room is empty. I limp to the window. I can see the spot in which I stood this afternoon. I turn on my flashlight and crawl around on the floor, but can find no dead moths. I search in the corners and under flaps of sagging wallpaper, but come up empty-handed. My hip clicks and my ankle is throbbing. I sit against a wall, massage my knees, then turn off my flashlight. "Where are your wings?" I call out. She appears next to the fireplace and extends a finger. I frown. "I already looked at the fireplace," I tell her. She stamps a scrawny leg, making no sound and disturbing no dust. She jabs her finger insistently. I scoot towards the fireplace and follow the line of her arm to a black brick. Her otherworldly shine makes it easy for me to see that the brick is not mortared in place, but rather juts out. The brick is rough against my finger pads as I shimmy it back and forth until it is loose enough to remove. Behind the brick, I find a small box tied with twine. I look at the girl. She is across the room now, near the window, with her head cocked to one side. I take the box from the recess and blow off a thick layer of dust, then untie the twine. I unlatch the box and lift the lid. Inside is a dead, black moth. I can't imagine how it got here. Not caught, I think. Entombed. I think of that yellow-green sky. I lift the box towards the girl. "These are your wings?" She nods, her eyes big and mournful. I can easily imagine her sitting dejectedly in front of a mirror as her mother pulls at her wilted hair, trying to make it presentable. I wonder who she was and what happened to her. She's just a child, trapped alone in this comfortless house for a century. I have helped countless other like her. I offer her a smile. "We'll take it outside and set you free." Her timid smile meets mine. I am about to close the box when I see the wings of the moth flutter. It is almost imperceptible, perhaps a mere trick of the light or my breath disturbing the paper-light corpse. Then it shivers again. I had wiped dust from the box. It had been undisturbed for many, many years, and yet the moth had moved. My eyes slide sideways. I can see the girl on the edge of my vision. Her face. There is something about her face. Something trembly, like her skin is about to slip off. I snap my gaze to her. She looks normal as a ghost can look, still. "These are your wings?" My tone is soothing, loving. She nods emphatically and runs into the hallway, beckoning me to follow. I hesitate, then shine my flashlight on the box. The moth is grotesque and disfigured. It has 8 legs when it should have 6. Its wings are hard and shiny, its body too long. Is it even a moth? It consumed the sisters who walked without feet. The sisters who walked without feet. I had walked the grounds this afternoon, walked through the empty convent and the servants' quarters, stood outside the former girls' school, now a nursing home. I would expect a place this old, a place with this much history, to be teeming with tethered spirits, and yet I found only one. A cold fist clenches around my heart. I turn off my flashlight. She stands in the center of the room. "Did you eat them?" I asked quietly. "The others?" She is trembling, struggling. Her face wobbles. Then she slumps. Her arms droop and the glow goes out. Dark spots bloom on her face, spreading, taking the place of her eyes and her mouth. They are made of black liquid, of smoke, of nothing. Her eyes are gaping wounds of darkness. Her mouth a black maw. It's like she's bleeding shadows. She's still wearing that frilly white dress. It drifts towards me. My heart batters against my ribs. It's a ghost. It floated through a door. It couldn't move the brick. It can't touch me. It tugs on my hand. I feel its fingers. Flesh. It can touch. My leg feels warm. I realize I've wet myself. I smile at the creature and close the box. "All right, let us set you free." I make my way back down the hallway and begin my descent down the staircase, slowly, slowly. In one hand I hold the box with its soul, and in the other is my flashlight. I cannot set it free. I must give no indication that I want to flee. No indication. Fire. The nuns tried to burn the house down. It is beside me, in front of me, behind me. It appears and vanishes, circling me, assessing me. Tears leak from my eyes. I cannot tell if my heart is racing or if it has stopped altogether. Maybe I can set the house on fire. I can get outside without the moth. I can hear it fluttering inside the box. It wants to get out. I smile tenderly into the darkness. I know it is watching me, though it has no eyes. Let's set you free. I latch the box shut, retie the twine. I'll watch as flames devour the house, devour the thing inside. I'll laugh in the light of the hungry blaze. The girl is in front of me. It touches my hand. I blanch. It knows, it knows, it knows, it knows. I blind it with the flashlight, shining the brightness at its grotesque face. Nothing happens. It doesn't vanish. It's not frightened by the light. It was toying with me before, like a cat with a mouse. I scream and hurl the box into the depths of the dark house. I race towards the gap in the doors, towards the tendrils of moonlight peeking through, towards safety, and my foot hits the edge of the hole in the floor. My heel dangles over nothing. I almost regain my balance. Tiny, delicate fingers wrap around my ankle and yank. I hear a snap. I crumple. I try to pull my leg from the hole, but I nearly pass out from the pain. My leg feels wet, so wet, and I know I am bleeding profusely. I scream for help, scream as loudly as I can, but only my ears can hear it. I'm dizzy. I taste copper. I try to crawl towards the door, but the jagged pieces of wood trap my leg, trap me. My flashlight has rolled out of reach. The bulb flickers and flickers and goes out. In the darkness, I hear the fluttering of wings beating against a box. It stands over me, toying, waiting. It only eats the dead. No moth will carry my soul to the moon. Residuals. An orange leaf drifted off the branch of a cottonwood tree, moved by the icy breath of an early October breeze. It flipped and twisted through an open window and fluttered like a monarch past the shoulder of the bass player in a thick white coat. Carried by the last fingers of the icy breeze and swept by the soft melodies of the band, the leaf landed at the foot of Clayton Martin, and he cast his dark brown eyes upon it. The top half of his face was covered by a narrow mask, but his trim figure was easily recognizable in his lightweight tuxedo. He bent down and picked up the orange leaf, held it loosely in his fingers. The lead singer, in a deep, Frank Sinatra-type tone of voice, began to sing the next song. "It's a marvelous night for a moon dance," the words of the singer said, as some sort of strange breeze caught the leaf and flung it from Clayton's fingers towards a dazzling young woman in a sparkling black dress. "A fantabulous night to make romance, 'neath the cover of October skies," the song said. The orange leaf drifted towards the woman, the glistening glow of her green eyes hidden behind half of a mask as well. Her long, dark hair hung loosely at the flanks of her narrow face, and she caught Clayton's gaze and smiled so warmly towards him as the leaf passed her by. "And all the night's magic seems to whisper and hush, and all the soft moonlight seems to shine in your blush," the singer sang. There was a natural pull, like gravity, between them. Without a word, Clayton outstretched his arm and held his hand open towards her. Her red lips curved into a beautiful smile, and she seemed to glide across the room towards him. "Can I just have one more moon dance with you, my love?" sang the singer, as the woman's slender hand fell into his, her glove so soft and gentle in his palm. "Can I just make some more romance with you, my love?" Swirling masses twirled around the brightly lit room, like innocent shadows struck by the pale beams of a harvest moon. "And I know that the time is just right, and straight into my arms you will run," sang the singer in a low tone. Clayton and the woman moved across the floor, lost in a dazzling sensation of what could be love. Their young eyes were entranced by the unwavering gaze of one another. "My heart will be waiting to make sure that you're never alone." There was a sudden roar that rose high above the melodies of the band, and both Clayton and the woman turned their heads to the roof above them. A snap and a crack of wooden beams, as loud as an explosion, shook the earth. Then there was nothing but horrified screams. Regan Lowe's young eyes stared at the charred and blackened remains of the Waverley mansion. Its withering ruins were brightly illuminated by the light of a full October moon. It was a gas explosion that caused the roof to fall that night, Regan's grandfather said. 83 people were killed. That was back in 1977, and ever since, folks been sayin' you can still hear people dancin' in the remains of the ballroom on nights like tonight. An orange leaf, pushed by the icy breath of an early October breeze, drifted past Regan's nose like a monarch fluttering by. "Have you ever seen a ghost in there, Grandpa?" Regan's grandfather smiled. "Don't reckon I have, kiddo, but every so often, I think I can still hear music driftin' down from that old place." The Hands of Death. Everything is always changing. Whether you like it or not, it's going to change. The mortals who watch the stars during their moment with them may say they will always be there, but the stars must die. Everything dies in the end. Life and death have been watching the stars for as long as they have been there. Life admires the beauty they behold and the joy they bring to their mortal watchers, but death cannot do the same. The stars suffer the same destiny the mortals do, for they live a wondrous life, but must find their end in a burning grave. "I was afraid I was going to find you here, sister." Life gracefully walked over to Death, sitting in the tree he had grown for her, watching the stars. With the summoned help of the earth around him, steps were created towards the branch where Death sat. "Why be afraid? I'm merely here to appraise the stars," Death mumbled, as her brother sat next to her, wrapping an arm around her. "Oh, Death," Life chuckled, "I know you better than the sun knows the moon. We are connected. I can feel both your joy and despair. Tell me, dear sister, what haunts your conscience this night?" "Nothing more than my own thoughts. They are foolish, yet still loud enough to torment my mind." The buds in the leaves of the tree started to bloom on Life's side of the branch, while the flowers on Death's side closed up with darkening petals. "And what are these thoughts that have brought you up to our tree?" Life took hold of his sister's hand, the glow of his skin overpowering the darkness that followed Death in her every step. "I am the thing that mortals fear. They pray to the skies above to never meet me, to never leave your hands." Death watched the stars twinkle as her thoughts left her mouth. "The only mortals who wish to see me are those who hate their time with you, and I wish not to see them until their time is true." The mortals fear what they don't understand. You are a great unknown, an adventure that everyone must take. Life squeezed her hand in reassurance, calming her mind with each and every word he uttered. An adventure no one wishes to take. But they must, for their path is written among the stars. Life brought Death's gaze to his own, showing her a smile full of admiration and hope. They know not of how kind your hand is. They have yet to experience the care you put into each soul that finds resting in your palace. Why must they live in fear while they wait to leave you? I see no fairness in it. I wonder if the mortals would be better off without my presence." "You wonder a thing you already know the answer to. Without an end, there is no beginning. If there is never sadness, then there would never be any joy. Without you, there is no me. The mortal needs us both, or else all would be lost." "You're right," Death sighed, but not with a heavy heart. "Why must I ponder the things I already know? The fact that you ponder is what makes you worthy of your role." Her voice was lovely, an enchanting story that found its way to every ear that entered her garden. A rainbow of flowers stood in every direction. Death couldn't name them all, but each and every one was important. They belonged to fate, and that's all they needed to be unique. Fate stood in the middle of her garden, seated in her throne, a throne made of the crystallized wood of a dead tree that stood there before the garden ever did. It was a gift from death, a gift of love. Her garden was filled with flowers. It was filled with trees of many leaves and fruits, filled with every animal that walked the earth. It was filled with gifts from life. Her garden was filled with life, but she chooses for death to be the center of it all. Both life and death proclaimed their love for fate, and fate had chosen her. "My love," fate called out, a smile shining brighter than the sun. "Join me, won't you?" Her call was intoxicating. Even if death didn't want to go to her, she wouldn't have had any choice. "My apologies for being gone so long," Death spoke as she took her place next to her queen. "That is of little thought now," fate purred as Death took her hand, pressing a kiss upon the smooth skin. "You are here now, and that is all I care about." The birds of the garden sung as the moonlight shone down on the couple in fate's garden. Death's presence in the garden always brought a chill upon the garden, but fate never said a word. "I missed you," fate hummed, leaning into the sensation of death's cold touch. "How I wish you would stay with me more." "I wish for the same." The light from the flowers beneath their feet was dimmed by the aura that followed death wherever she went. "No matter how much I wish, I cannot leave my post. The souls of the mortals would be lost without my guiding hand." "What about the reapers? The reapers can bring souls to rest." Fate's eyes sparkled as she pleaded with death, her crown shining with the same glow. "The reapers must be watched over. They must be taught. Their work must be appreciated, and I cannot do that if I am not present." "What about your children? They are powerful. They can watch over the reapers." Fate asked the same question she'd asked time after time. "Sorrow and peace are powerful, and I couldn't be more proud of them. They are still young and have much more to learn. I couldn't bear to leave them before they have mastered the art of caring for lost souls." "Must you always be right?" Fate sighed, before placing her fingers on Death's cheeks, ignoring the frosty touch. She caressed Death's cheeks, humming her love. "I wish I could be wrong, for my heart yearns to stay in your garden." Fate laughed, bringing Death closer. "Though I complain, it's what I love most about you. You may be dead, but your heart is far from it. You wish to put your work aside for me, but you know the importance of what you do." Fate opened her arms for Death to come into her embrace. "The mortals come first, as it should always be. Neither of us should ever stray away from the purpose we serve." "They would have no path if you were to step away from your garden." Death showed her love along the skin of Fate, her voice singing its beautiful song as she did. "No one could take your place, for your crown would fit no other." "You have such a way with words." Fate ran her fingers through the dark web of Death's dark locks. "This is why I chose you as my lover. I knew we were meant to be." "It is you who chooses what is meant to be," Death mumbled through Fate's bare neck. "Then I must have made the right choice. Now I command you to silence your thoughts, and let us enjoy this brief moment together." Death hummed a laugh, pulling back from her neck and leaning into her side. "Of course, my queen." The same stars shined over them and the mortals. Death looked up at the stars and still saw the end that would one day come for each and every star that shined in the sky. There was more than that, though, for the stars still had a life to live before their time came.